So I will mute you all, but you should be able to unmute yourselves when you need to. And we're away, Mark.
We are. And welcome to Lit Balm 104. Yes, you heard it. The 104th episode of Lit Balm on this planet. As you know, we started in 2020 and we still continue to keep going. Of course, Lit Balm was a solution initially, a balm of like lyric and poetry during the crazy beginnings of our pandemic. So, but it has transformed itself into something different, more unique, I think. And it's been amazing to have all these amazing voices, streaming live via Facebook and on Zoom. And tonight, we are so happy to have the first Lit Balm flash fiction episode. And tonight we're featuring Meg Pokrass, Jeff Friedman, Michael C. Keith, Robert Scotellaro, and Kim Chinquee. And a big question, of course, to everybody is, what is a prose poem and what is a piece of flash fiction? Are they the same? Are they not the same? These questions will be answered, or at least addressed, sometime later in the show. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce my absent co-host, Jonathan Penton, who founded Unlikely Stories in 1998. He's lent his editorial and management assistance to many literary and artistic ventures. He founded, in 2005, he founded Unlikely Books, which publishes 3 to 5 books of poetry a year. He's organized literary performances and performed himself across the United States. His poetry books are Last Chap, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, Prosthetic Gods, and Standards of Sadity, and the free e-chapbook Backstories, which you can download from Argotist eBooks. Cassandra, you're going to read something from Jonathan.
I do. I have a Jonathan poem here, an ekphrastic one from the Sculpture Garden in New Orleans, and it's called Pablo Castle's Obelisk. Movies bleed into memory. I can scarcely see what's in front of me. For flashes of a woman's just dead blood painting a faultless violin. But there is nothing flawless here. There is the tower of broken parts never intended for repair. Acid wasn't very good by then. By the time I was taking it, I witnessed a lot of fights, initiated a few more. Now I see overlays, I dream or I hallucinate, if you really prefer that term, on top of whatever I'm experiencing. Stacks of reality mildly distracting me from yours. Now I am more than whole. If you peel away the red paint, if you peel away the just dead woman, if you peel away the broken violins, you'll find a copper structure endlessly hammered of no use to anyone, yet fated to last thousands of your years. So that's by Jonathan Penton on a French sculpture.
And now we hear from Cassandra herself. Cassandra Atherton is an award-winning writer, scholar of prose poetry, professor of writing literature in Melbourne, Australia. Her most recent books of prose poetry are Pre-Raphaelite, because she only writes prose poetry, Leftovers, and Fugitive Letters. She's currently writing a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council. Cassandra co-wrote Prose Poetry, An Introduction, which is an amazing book, came out with Princeton New Press last year, I believe. And, it's like this most comprehensive study of prose poetry in the English language and more. And then the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry as well. She's commissioning editor for Westerly magazine.
I'm going to read a short, cheeky one called Toe Box. Stripped back to eyeliner and underwear, jet lag presses the balls of my feet into the carpet, electric toes. I'm throbbing like a bass line, limbs heavy and numb. The room is velvet dark, neon lighting my veins, hot pink heart light. If I close my eyes, I'll wake to find the echo of your knock at my door or a whisper lingering in the door jamb. Between jittery breaths, I wrap my ballet skirt around my waist and coax my feet into point shoes. It's one pink streak to your room, ribbons trailing. When you put your hands under my thighs, my toe boxes rap against the bedhead. They sound like the meter of your heart or the petty battements of desire. Next, I'm going to introduce the intrepid Mark Vincennes. He is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He's published 20 books of poetry, including, more recently, Einstein Fledermaus, The Little Book of Earthly Delights, A Brief Conversation with Consciousness, and There Might Be a Moon or a Dog, which is with Gazebo in Australia. There are also 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues forthcoming from Spite and Dival, and The Pearl Diver of Iran Mani forthcoming from White Pine Press. An album of music, ambience, and verse, I think everyone knows it's called Left Hand Clapping by now, is forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincennes is also a prolific translator. He's translated from every language in the world. No, not really, but we know it's German, Romanian, and French. He's published 11 books of translations, most recently, the very beautiful and audible Blue Selected Poems, 1963 to 2016, by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz, which is just out with White Pine Press. He is currently working on a stellar novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He's lived all over the world. Join in from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives in rural Western Massachusetts on a farm overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are more banded killifish, chain pickerel, and Eastern Creek chub suckers than people. What is a chub sucker? Oh my goodness.
Well, you'll just have to figure that one out.
I'll Google. I'll Google.
So this is either a prose poem or a flash fiction. I'm not sure. You guys will have to tell me. Poison Tree Frogs Wrestling in Nightshade for Carol Novak. They say there are a series of islands across the Pacific, 42 all told. That's if you count the provinces of Madagascar, where on each island there is another color of poisonous tree frog. All the shades of light, something from everything in the prism. Here's a red frog on island 1, and there's a purple frog on island 2, and turquoise blue on island 3. Honestly, it frightens me as I sit here in a vessel destined to island 2. Don't get me wrong, I've always favored purple, violet, indigo, delicate, bittersweet, mildly poisonous. First foot forward, be brave. But honestly, this is all hyperbole. The first nights were adorned in black snakes, twinned devil spiders, something like an anaconda that fell from a vine. On the other hand, there was the champagne and cheese. We were giddy as children until midnight. On the third night, they appeared, the purple, the red, and the blue. Chest to chest, they each weighed in at 2 pounds, but they wore the mark of their success tattooed to their foreheads. I remember one wore a figure 8, or perhaps it was infinity. I think that was the red one. This was a fight for Purple Island, which red clearly planned to turn red. On the other hand, blue, who we all really knew was the one, wore a simple tattoo. It was a straight line, and number 1, here too, purple was cool. His tattoo was no pictogram or cipher, no hieroglyph or rune. It was a clean board, a blank slate, a clearing. The battle was already won. And as each retreated, Purple strode out, climbed his precious tree, and from the roof of the world, over a swaying sea, he watched the corners flowing in to his hands. And now I'm delighted to introduce the first of our flash fiction readers tonight, Jeff Friedman, whose 10th book, Ashes in Paradise, will soon be published by Mad Hat Press. Jeff's poems, many stories and translations have appeared in many journals, including American Poetry Review, Poetry International, New England and the anthologies cast iron airplanes that can actually fly, and 80 American poets on their prose poetry, flash fiction funny, flash non-fiction funny, Hotel America best microfiction 2021 and 22, and the New Republic. He has received an NEA Literature Translation Fellowship, 2 individual artist grants from the New Hampshire Arts Council, and numerous other awards. Meg Pokrass and Jeff Friedman's co-written collection of fabulous microfiction, The House of Grana Padano, was published by Pelicanesis in April of this year. Welcome, Jeff. You need to unmute, my friend. Unmute.
Oh, well, I was going to mime this. Well, let me see. How can it be unmute?
Now
You did the opposite. Now, hooray! Yes, now.
Well, I finally made it. So Mark and I called each other up about wearing the same hat tonight. So we thought we'd dress alike. So a Grana Padano is just, it's a cheese that's a little harder to grate than Parmesan or Pecorino. So anyway, Meg who's reading next after me, we're going to be reading pieces from our book, House of Grana Padano. It was published by Pelicanesis Press in April, and it's available through Pelicanesis, Amazon, and many other venues, actually. The book was almost entirely co-written, our voices in nearly every piece. So that was a really wonderful experience working back and forth with Meg. I'm going to start out reading some pieces, a piece from the first section of the book, which is called The Sales Force. And the first piece I'm going to read is The Salesman Gets a Suit. And when we first met each other, we didn't know each other when we first started writing, or we hardly knew each other. We discovered that we were both from sales families, so it was interesting. We ended up with a sales section. The salesman gets a suit. My father walks into a clothing store. Sell me a suit, he says to a thin, bald-headed man. Without even looking, the bald-headed man pulls the silk suit off the rack. This suit is made for you, he says, holding the hanger in his right hand and letting the pants legs drape over his arm. Just feel it. My father brushes it gently with his fingers as though smoothing out the curls of his own hair. I'm a salesman too, he says. I knew it, the bald-headed man says. I could tell the minute you entered the store. The suit is shiny like the lobby in a posh hotel, shiny like a brand new Cadillac parked in the car dealer's window. My father takes it into the dressing room, and when he comes out, the suit swells with his plump belly. The sleeves of the jacket swallow his hands. The pants legs sweep the floor. He looks short and fat, lost in cloth. This suit makes you look like a whole new man, like someone ready to make a killing, the bald-headed man says, and leads him to the mirror. In the mirror, the suit shapes itself to his body, fits him to a T. In the mirror, he's as graceful as a shadow, as light on his feet as a cool breeze rustling his pants legs. He leans forward as if telling the suit a secret. He smiles, and the suit smiles back. Just get something adjusted here. So the next part, the next section of the book is the circus comes to town. I'm going to read a piece called The Weak Man in the Circus. We have some unusual circus acts in this book. The Weak Man in the Circus. I live on a diet of air particles and naps, enough to keep me awake, but not enough to give me the strength to walk outside or even to lift a glass of water to my lips. For if I could do that, I would lose my living. Each day, the boisterous crowd clamors inside my tent, eager to see me attempt my famous feats. I start with hoisting a book, but my skinny arms can't hold it up for even a second, so it falls to the ground. Then I rise slowly with Selena, my lover and assistant, at my side, holding me up as I take a step or two. Next, I might flex my arm to show off my very small hump of a bicep and my bony elbows. Eventually, I lift a piece of paper. As it rises almost to my chest, I give out and the paper floats toward the crowd. They cheer wildly and throw bills and coins in my direction. I place my fingers around a quarter and act as if I'm going to pocket it, but it's no use. It's too heavy and it drops, which causes them to pitch even more money at me, knowing that I don't have the strength to spend it. When I pretend to faint, dropping into my cot, my lover signals for the crowd to empty out. When they leave, she collects the money and counts it before locking it away in a trunk. You outdid yourself, honey, she says, even if I didn't. When we make love, it's from a distance. She blows kisses at me with her hand. I catch them with my lips and close my eyes. Let's see, I'm gonna go to the, what page is that on? 65. I'm going to the, one of our sections is called Messing with Love, and it's about messy love, as you can tell. And I'm gonna start with I'm gonna read a piece called What You Can't Fix. She was always fixing me, stuffing filler in my holes, applying putty or crazy glue to seal off any cracks to be sure nothing got in. She would pace in front of me as if I were a sculpture, looking at me and thinking, and then she would release herself, satisfied for the moment that the holes were gone and that I was becoming something beautiful and solid. Still, there were holes in my mind she couldn't fix, holes where the light got in, and sometimes snow and rain, holes where my thoughts escaped when they had to. But when she put on her blue satin kimono and hovered near me, I could forgive her. When we made love, it was like hearing the rain beat on the roof, knowing it will not get in. And then a fun one called Family Sorcerer from The Curse of the Family. I think, let's see, what page is that on? 103. This is sort of a composite of Meg's and my families. I think both families sort of appear in here. Family Sorcerer. Under the evening star of the winter solstice, I persuaded an evil sorcerer into undoing the curse in my family. One brother escaped the sticky web of indecision in which he'd been caught like a fly since college. He stood there beaming at me with his contagious smile. The other brother pushed away the boulder that had crushed his legs in middle age and leaped up like a gymnast and told us about his exciting escape. Then, after years, my mother flew up out of a pile of ashes. You're all such successes, she chirped. We held hands and laughed, and one of the brothers told the old family joke about cousin Mildred, who fell in the bathtub, her head cracking open like a watermelon. And then Mildred became a concert pianist, my mother reminded us. Before the fall in the bathtub, she could hardly play Three Blind Mice. We toasted cousin Mildred and second chances. One of my brothers did a funny impression of our father, who had run off to Hollywood when we were little to become an actor. Remember his bad Fred McMurray impression, my brother said? It was amazing to be back together like this, but something was bothering me. The evil sorcerer kept quiet, but I could feel him brooding. I could see something foreboding in his large brown eyes. I'm worried, I said to the sorcerer, pulling him aside. I noticed that the sorcerer's hat was frayed around the edges. And then for a moment, his face changed. It was our father. Dad, I said, staring into the patched elbows of the sweater. Shh, he whispered, his skin as wrinkled as the milk skim on an old cup of burnt coffee. Only you can see me as I am. Don't tell them, he said. It's him, I shouted. Immediately, my siblings began arguing, their faces cracking with anger. My mother confronted her husband. What did you do to us, she demanded to know. I brought you together, he said, then and now. You ruined us, she said, and then before our mother could punch him, the sorcerer disappeared. A cold wind blew through the room as she dissolved into a swirl of ashes. For a moment, my brother stopped fighting and stared into the small tornado that was our mother. Then the first evening star blinked out, and a blanket of tiny, indifferent stars spread over the sky like a net. I'm going to do a piece called Picking Up the Moose, which came about because I wrote a poem called Bear Fight about a bear, a man being in love with a woman who's in love with a bear. And then Meg wrote a poem off my poem. And then I wrote a poem off her poem. And then she got into my poem got into the poem I wrote off her poem and started putting her own character to go against mine. So you can see if you can untangle who these people are, who these animals are. Picking up the moose. At a party, I met a moose who was dating a bear. A drink in his paw, the bear was in the corner with a pretty cat with bright violet eyes. What's with these animals, I wondered. The bear looked a little sleazy, but the moose was really very attractive with big eyes and a prominent nose. She was wearing some kind of strong perfume that attracted and repulsed me. It looks as though your bear has found a cat, I said. She snorted. I took that as a sign she agreed. What do you say we go home together, I asked. I don't date dogs, she said. That seems a little inflexible, I replied. She kicked the ground several times with her hooves. Does that mean she wants to dance, or is that dancing for a moose? My girl was playing, and all the other animals were slow dancing. When she pulled away from me, I barked several times. That got me a lot of nasty looks, but not from the moose, who faced me again. Forget the bear, I said. I took off my mask. I'm not a dog, I said. Well, what are you then, she said. She took off her mask, and she was still a moose. I saw the bear outside the window chasing the cat up a tree. The moose began shifting her weight back and forth on her long legs, and pretty soon we were dancing cheek to cheek. And I'm going to finish with one more sales piece, a piece called Something Special. After returning from a 2-week sales trip one Friday evening, my father swept through the door like a gust of leaves and dust, a wind blowing through the rooms of our apartment. He heaved his suitcases onto the bed and unloaded his samples first, hanging them in the closet, and then his wilted shirt and pants. Don't make a mess, my mother said. Too late. He always made a mess. Debris was scattered on the floor, and she began sweeping around him with a broom she kept handy in their bedroom closet. Out of the suitcase, my father lifted a tiny bronze-colored roulette wheel. I bought this for you, he said. It's one of a kind. It looked like something that might have come from a Cracker Jack box. I stared at it for a moment, and then he placed it in my hand. Don't break it. He had promised to bring home something really special, an early Hanukkah gift. I didn't hide my disappointment. He laughed. Here's your real gift. From his pocket, he plucked a shiny coin larger than a quarter. Do you know what this is, he asked. A Kennedy $50, I answered. I reached for it, knowing I could buy 10 packs of baseball cards or 10 Nestle's Crunches with it, but he closed his palm on the coin. Not so fast. I'll keep it for you, he said. Someday it'll be worth something. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
And next we hear from Meg Pokrass, Jeff's most recent collaborator, who's also the author of 8 flash fiction collections and 2 flash novellas, including Spinning to Mars, which won the Blue Light Award in 2021, and The Lost Detector from Bamboo Dark Press in 2020. Meg's work has appeared in over 900 literary journals and has been anthologized in 3 Norton anthologies, New Micro, Flash Fiction International, and Flash Fiction America. Meg is the series co-editor of Best Microfiction and founding editor of New Flash Fiction Review. Meg lives in Inverness, Scotland.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's an honor to be here, and it's really fun to read from the House of Grana Padano with Jeff. I must say that working with Jeff was just such a delight. It was just so much fun that I'm afraid we're already working on another book because we can't seem to stop. So if that tells you anything, it's just been, we just have, this collaboration has just been a hoot. And it's really enlivened me. And I think it's given my writing a bit more of an improvisational spirit. It's been a fascinating process. Anyway, I'll start with, I do have a cold, or well, actually I have COVID, not to get your pity or anything, but I might, I'll see how long my voice will hold up. So the first story I'll read is from our salesperson section, which we call the Salesforce section, and it's called My Mother, the Realtor. Hiding from men like a gorgeous nun, my divorced mother was wedded to her spotless car. She sold houses to newly married couples who were loaded with cash, lucky out-of-town buyers who took in everything she said about real estate in California, as though hypnotized by her beautiful but impractical dresses. She drove them from posh neighborhood to posh neighborhood and talked to them about dreams and possibilities, about living in the silks of luxury and standing with their cocktails on the lovely verandas as they leaned toward the hills. Talked to them about the exotic birds that fly out of the twilight and change the lives of everyone who sees them. Beautiful people become beautiful by living in these houses, she would say. At home, late in the evening, she'd tell me, the business is drying up. And I learned how to assure her that it wasn't, how to sell her back her own dream that the future was ours. And the next one is called My Circus Grandmother, and it's from our circus section. Grandma's air had been sucked out of her days. A few decades retired, the tattoos on her body drooped as if they were looking for water. Her bright purple flowers faded into a mouth cloud. Her dragons looked more like stuffed pets. Her snake swallowed her waist. Once she told me she missed the drunken card game afternoons, missed the rude duck sounds of the clowns. She was angry as a bulldog until her afternoon wine. I was 12 and still felt like a picture on the wall, as if waiting for my life to become a life. The heat of summer days buzzing over my skin. I'd make myself a dry turkey sandwich, flipping through childhood. I know what I want, I told her. I want to be an illustrated lady just like you, I said. She shook her head as if I just got the right answer to the $1 million question. Monkey face, she told me the year she contracted cancer. I was broken all my life, but it never made me any less interesting. There was a lump in her gut and it wouldn't stop growing. I held her hand, curled up like a hawk's talon. I told her jokes that I heard on TV. She laughed. You're no stand-up comic, but Grandma loves you, darling. Hallelujah. She had a tattoo of a clown on each of her biceps. I loved those clowns, those arms. In the end, the clowns seemed to fall asleep where her muscles used to be. When I cradled her head, her last laugh broke on my cheek. And the next story is called Memories of Motown, from our Motown. We have a Motown and More section. It makes me sad to think about how my father, the magician, loved to dance with me, how he turned me in the living room to Love Is Standing By or to My Girl. I'd stare up at him like he was my Houdini, and he'd lead me right into his own haze of smoke, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He danced with me instead of my sister, danced with me instead of my mom, a slippery grin on his face, oblivious to anything but moving with me to the music. My sister cried until my mom held her, swaying together in the living room, slow dancing to Smoke It's in Your Eyes, as my father folded me so far into himself that for the rest of my childhood, I disappeared. And the next story is called Broken Man, which was after a Bob Dylan song, Everything is Broken. But I think this is in our dysfunctional love relationship section, messy love section. Sometimes I get the sections a little mixed up. Broken Man. He and I meet in a cheap hotel room, broken lamp, broken springs, broken shower. He cocks an eyebrow at me because I've broken my New Year's resolution. He's touching my bad knee, saying he likes my rickety gait. When we make love, the shrunken fitted sheet pops off the disabled mattress. Figures, I say, but the joke breaks in half. My telephone is ringing like a drunken mother's argument. He is disapproving of the call, does not believe in phone calls or mothers. Never needed no mother in prison, he tells me. I feel sorry for him and all of his interrupted stories. He looks at me as if he's wearing a choke collar. Choke collars never teach a dog anything, I tell myself. The next one's a little bit long. I hope my voice will make it through. It's called Pet Loss, and it's from our dysfunctional love section. Since Hubert the Since Hubert the bearded dragon died, the thing that cheered me up was having sex with my diner customers. The first one was Taylor, middle-aged, married, and polyamorous, hugged like a boa constrictor. Pet loss is so hard, he'd say, squeezing me like a pinky mouse, making me feel like I was alive again. After one of our lovemaking sessions, he ended up in the hospital with heart failure. I visited him there, thinking of that Hubert would have liked the unnatural warmth of the hospital room. His wife, Alexis, was by his bedside. I usually see you in your diner outfit, she said. She gave me a lift home in her Honda. He'll be fine, she said, thinking that I was worried about her husband. I invited her into my apartment. That was Hubert's terrarium, I said, pointing to a cluttered corner of the room. I still had his UV light plugged in. She stared at the pet loss support group flyers and hugged me as hard as her husband did. Losing a pet is like losing a dream, she said, moving in to kiss me. After Taylor and Alexis, there was Charlene, who owned the Critter Center and wanted to harvest my eggs. I could imagine my babies hatching in an incubator, but not in another woman's belly. You and I will make beautiful creatures, she said at the end of my shift, kissing me with the most beautiful scaly lips. And then it was Fernando, a retired bullfighter with scars all over his body. I asked him if he'd like to meet me after work and to accompany me to the Critter Center and help me choose one of the baby iguanas. That one looks a little bit like you, he said, pointing to a wise-looking, buggy-eyed lizard. Afterward, making love with me on my alligator patterned rug, he promised me his couch in Spain whenever I wanted to travel. I've never been to Spain, I said. Can I bring the iguana? He said, why not? It left me with a case of herpes and the promise of a climate so warm that a reptile wouldn't even need a UV bulb to stay alive. Then there was Ilya, who sat at the counter and waited for me to arrive every day. I'd take you home, he would say, and make you happy. In the corner of his apartment, he had an aquarium with only one fish. Where are the other fish? I asked. I had a piranha, he said. He ate all the others. I stared at the fish, who looked lonely and useless, like a castaway who had lost his will to float. Ilya removed my jacket and kissed me sweetly on the lips. I can be your prince, he said, his big Russian eyes full of soulfulness. Be my frog instead, I said. He squatted down on all fours and croaked. So the next story is from our dysfunctional family section, Curse of the Family section, and it's called Fatherless Daughters. In springtime, abandoned daughters burst like myopic butterflies with binoculars attached to their faces while they try to identify their absent fathers who zip through the clouds like geese, but they're not geese, and they have no sense of direction. Can you see me down here, Dad? One abandoned daughter trills, while one father zigzags ever closer to the sun. It's hurting my eyes, he yells, waving his pale wings like flags. Another abandoned daughter spots a cloud in the shape of her father and flies through him again and again. He wasn't much of a father, she says. He's better as a cloud. Another daughter shouts, heads up, as her father falls from the sky headlong into the crowd of abandoned daughters. The other fathers cringe and avoid looking down. They're out to get us, they say. They want money or hugs or something. The daughters, tired of treading air, fling themselves toward their fathers, eager to bring one home, even if he's somebody else's father, even if he never earns another dime, even if he sheds all of his feathers. But the fathers prove elusive, no longer really fathers. And I'll just read one more. It's from our Cognac Dream section. We drank a lot of cognac when we first started working together. It's called Quaking. I'm at the sink and the house is quaking, and I'm tired of being a wife. The bills still need to be paid, I shout. My husband from the back of the house yells back at me that he always pays on time. And then why do we keep getting debt notices by text and email? The house is shaking, shimmy shammying, cha-cha-chaing like something out of a cartoon. And my husband reminds me of a cartoon bird with a curved beak and an appetite for sarcasm. It's difficult to stand with the house in constant motion, even though I hold on to the table. I feel the way my mother must have felt when she swore she saw my father's ghost floating through the kitchen in the late evenings. The windows are starting to break. What are we going to do? I shout. My husband is either trying to get to me or attempting to escape the house. Plaster falls over us, his hair and face white. The dog is under the table where we should be. I point at the dog, my mouth saying, "Good dog," with admiration in my voice. Now the ceiling is coming down in chunks. "We're dying," my husband shouts, and I yell back, "Well, that'd be a relief," though maybe he's right. And then the whole damn place collapses. When the quaking stops, we all dig our way out. The dog emerges from the rubble and shakes off the plaster dust. My husband rises, but he's not so clean. He hugs me tightly, and that feels good, but then I push myself back. Next month, I say, pay the bills on time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. Fantastic. The question is, did he pay the bills on time the next time? Next, we hear from Kim Chinquee, who is the author of 6 collections. And her 7th book, her debut novel, Pipette, is due out in November with Ravenna Press. Kim grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin. She served as a medical lab technician in the Air Force and elsewhere, and is an associate professor of English at SUNY Buffalo State, where she co-edits and co-directs its writing major. She is the recipient of 3 Pushcart Prizes, a Henfield Prize, a senior editor of New World Writing, associate editor of Midwest Review, and chief editor of Elm Leaves Journal. Kim is a triathlete and lives with her 3 dogs in Buffalo, New York. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. And thanks, Meg and Jeff, for your great readings. Glad to hear more dogs and stories. And I also have choke collars in mine. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually going to read from my new novel. Most of the chapters here are flash fictions. I should say all of the chapters are flash fictions. Some prose poems, perhaps. But this started as a project in January of 2020. I had asked some of my writing friends, we sort of committed to writing a flash a day, and not knowing that COVID was going to hit. So when I went to have this, Ravenna agreed to publish this collection of mine, and then as I was editing it, I said to the editor, I said, I think this is a novel because they're so connected. So I revised everything and made it into a novel. So after probably 8 or 9 revisions, I think it's finally out the door. It's finally to the printer. So I'm going to read some of these selections, and some of these have been published in journals like Noon, Matter Press, Post Road, Midwest Review. And one of the pieces I'm going to read actually received a Pushcart Prize from 2022, so it'll be published in the upcoming Pushcart Prize anthology. So this is the first couple chapters of the book. Ballerina. At the ballet, a strong man carries with grace his ballerina. They're beautiful in their green and white tights. They do pirouettes. I have dreams of pipetting in the heavens, and when I wake, the bed is small and hard. The walls are cinder, I'm at the Y. I sleep in the same clothes I wore on the train over. I get back on the train. It's a long way home. The man in blue continues to be the man in blue. The men in blue take tickets. The train stops. It makes a whistle. The horn. It whooshes and whirls. The next piece of I Pet As Many As I Can was published in noon 2022. No, 21. I don't know. Yeah, 21. Okay. I pet as many as I can. It's not like my dogs are not okay, but it's not like having children. My son is an adult now with dogs and a wife. I was staying at the Y near Central Park and spent a good deal of my time with men. We brushed our teeth in the same sink. We bathed using the same water. We sometimes relieved ourselves without shutting the doors. I also petted as many dogs on leashes as I could. All the dogs seemed very interested in me. I drive my car an hour after the train ride. When I get to the door, the dogs greet me, helicoptering around. I guess I'm just kind of a doggy lady. The next chapter is, well, it's not the next chapter. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but this is called SWAT Team. A SWAT team was brought in, I hear from the TV. My partner, Henry, keeps the channel on the news. I'm in the kitchen making more kale chips. I wash the dishes, dry them. I shout out to Henry, need anything? He joins me, gets out the cutting board, slices up a turnip. He says, only you. The knife makes a hard sound against the board. The TV blares something loud about a blow up. Our dogs stand at our feet. They wait for something to drop. This kind of skips ahead to, as, I mean, this is fiction, but a lot of it is sort of autobiographical. And this follows, well, I'll just read it and you probably figure it out. So, tour guides. All my classes are remote now. In San Antonio, the day after the conference, I walked alone along the Riverwalk. Families and friends were out together, dining, shopping, laughing. I found a table at a restaurant where I dined alone. I ordered greens. I got out my computer responding to emails. I recalled my first visit to the Water Walk, 18, my last weekend of the Air Force basic training. Also the same city where I later did medical training, where I met the man who'd be my husband. I walked. The conference was over. I imagined lights and people on boats, tour guides, laughter, ice cream. In my new neighborhood, I take my dogs for a walk. The virus has spread. The whole country, practically the whole world, is on some kind of lockdown. And the next chapter I'm going to read is called Oceans and Parks. It's been 51 days since the fight with Henry. My dogs look at me with heads tilted. We can go to the movies, honey, I say to them, but we really can't. Everyone's on lockdown. I still tape them to the parks. There are oceans of them. Ones Olmsted had created. The dogs' limbs look tired. Their eyes are like questions. Okay, so this next chapter I'm going to read is kind of skips ahead. This is called Buzzcut. This character, after COVID, a couple 6 weeks after COVID, she shaved her head. So that's why it's called Buzzcut. I wake from another dream of being lost. I leave my bike somewhere but can't find it. The landscape has turned itself around. Everyone else seems to know where they are, watching a game, keeping score, and I'm on my own, sweating up a hill, daffodils waving. It's a rainy morning. I open the curtains. The dogs beg at my feet. It's past 9 a.m. I go to the front porch, collect the Sunday paper. Throughout the day, the dream stays with me. It brings on memories of other dreams, not able to find my car, missing flights, losing my phone, losing my wallet, losing my connections. I look in the mirror, pluck my brows. I steady my jawline. I run my hands over my head. Everything is smooth now. All right, just have a couple more. Let's skip a little bit further ahead. This character, she starts getting into her triathlon training. This is called The Man Who Helped Me. My apartment's still so hot. I finally shut the windows. It's hotter to keep them open, which lets in the heat and the noise of motorbikes blaring off the interstate. And the bus, loud even in its rule following, letting people off and on and off. I use Sky Miles to get myself and the dogs a hotel with AC. We're on the 12th floor. I look down into the city and out to the Great Lake, where I ride along on its bike path. I look out to the break wall. The dogs tilt their heads. I tell them, I could have found a better hotel, but not every hotel likes you. On the bed, I sprawl the best I can. I turn up the AC. I go to Walgreens for the third time since my crash. Buy more dressings. I'm getting to know which kinds work better for the road rashes on my knuckles, my fingers, my elbow, my knee, the raw skin on my shoulder. I take off all my old dressings. The bruise on my hip has turned a lighter purple. I run the shower and feel the water on my fingers, the sting. I step in, adjust the temp. I address my wounds. It's my goal to find the man who helped me. All right, yeah, because I got this next one. I got two more. This one is actually, I would consider this more of a prose poem. Too big to fit anywhere. Longing, lounging, lunging, hating waking up, biting my fingernails, fighting a gem of a flower in my yard, holding my puppy, hugging my puppy, picking up my puppy's poop, opening the top drawer in the desk I had refurbished that's too big to fit anywhere except my dining room that holds my maternal grandmother's binoculars he wore during the Second World War. Finding his uniform hanging in the closet, letters he wrote to his friends when he served, bullets, army razors, how I took them when I found them and I put them in my pocket. He was dead. My grandmother was dead, my uncle was dead, and the farm that had been in the family for years and years and years was going up for auction. The living had to clean it. There was my grandmother's teacup. She was a farmer who put on her bandana every morning and went out to milk the cows. I never saw her drink tea. I never saw anyone drinking tea on my mother's side of the family. Will I miss anything when I die? Will I miss wondering? I won't miss wondering if there's anything hereafter. All right, and the last one I'm going to read is, this was published in Post Road, and this is actually going to be published in the Pushcart Prize anthology. How do you roll? Things I love about my new home. Having a full spread on the bed if I want, bright colors, lighting candles, the whir of transit buses passing, keeping my life clean, being organized, being able just to find things, eating meals at the table, not always having the TV on, being close to Wegmans, cooking for myself, doing my own laundry, enjoying my art, my plants, my dogs, long soaks in the bathtub, taking in my salts, lavender oils, lights down with a lit candle and low music, practicing self-care, knowing where my clothes are, being able to exercise whenever and in whatever ways I want, drinking wine with dinner, my nice big kitchen, cooking vegan, cooking non-vegan, or not cooking at all, making my own plate, not having to hear bad things about liberals, being liberal, writing at my desk, reading, being quiet, feeling cleansed, asking my dogs, how do you roll? Walks to my favorite park where I can fly a kite if I want, being in awe of the enormous sky I can see clear out my window, the pandemonium it makes when a storm breaks, making a lime into a kickball, acting like a wimbler or a warbler or a goose, being silly with myself, playing imaginary golf while playing an imaginary trumpet, eating imaginary or real blueberry sherbet in my fluffy velvet robe. Oh, how scrumptious. My place smells so delicious. Can you study my serology? Can you tell that I'm free now? Thank you.
Yes, we can, Kim. You are free now. Thank you so much for that wonderful reading. Next, we have from Michael C. Keith, who is the author or co-author of more than 24 groundbreaking books in electronic media, which have resulted in numerous awards and citations from President Clinton. Beyond that, he's the author of an acclaimed memoir, The Next Better Place, from Algonquin Books, and 20 short story collections, his latest, Quiet Geography, from Chavena Baba Press, and the late Epiphany of a Low Key Oracle from Scantic Books. A forthcoming collection will appear from Pelicanesis. He has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize several times, a Penn O. Henry Award, and was a finalist for the National Indie Excellence Award for Short Fiction Anthology, and a finalist for the International Book Award in the Fiction Visionary category. He's Professor Emeritus at Boston College. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor. I'm tickled to be sharing the dais with my fellow short fiction writers, and I thank you all. Today I'll read from 4 of my most recent manuscripts. Mark mentioned 2 of the books that were published this summer. Another one is coming at the beginning of this coming year, and yet another is in the hands of a publisher for its consideration. The first piece I'll read is called The Hartshorns. The Hartshorns. The family was in full agreement as to the kind of house they wished to live in. To begin with, it would have trampoline floors, undulating stairs, geodesic ceilings, neon walls, and gold lame curtain doors. And at all times, it would be stocked with baby rhinos and talking alpacas. There would be no kitchen. The parents and children would take their meals out or have them delivered. Clothing would be optional for guests on Tuesdays and Thursdays. None of these things were negotiable. This was a household that knew exactly what it wanted and refused to compromise. This is called Your Father Will Be Back as the Rain. The sudden movement of the tiny cluster of cottonwoods out beyond the barn caught Matthew's attention. It aroused his curiosity since nothing else moved in any other direction. In fact, the air had been dead for days, with only the occasional dust devil in the paddock stirring the parched western Nebraska soil. When he moved toward the trees, the wind intensified, causing their limbs to lift and fall as if they were attempting flight. For a split second, the smallest of the trees resembled his deceased father's silhouette, and Matthew stopped to focus on it. When he did, its human-like likeness faded, and stillness descended on the scene. "Dad," he called out. Then the skies opened. This is called Pining Away. Adam lived alone in a tiny 1-bedroom prefab slab house surrounded by endless acres of cranberry bogs. From his front steps, where he spent a good deal of his time, he estimated he could see clear to the next county. The only thing obscuring his view was a towering ancient evergreen possessing a single branch adorned with a cluster of pine cones at its tips. The solitary tree stood across the narrow strip of well-worn asphalt used by the growers to transport their crops to market. It was the only companion Adam had, and he was thankful for the old conifer and praised its maker for providing him with something to whom he could convey his sorrows. This is called If Necessity Dictates. We're in our stepfather's car going to visit his parents in Bangor. I don't want to be there because I don't like him and dislike his parents even more. I hate being in his custody since our mother died a year ago. Now he has us to do whatever he wants to us. We have no say. Sometimes I'm scared because I think he wants to do something weird, something sexual. He hasn't exactly tried yet, but I think it's coming soon. I tell my big sister, and she thinks I'm right because he's been real flirty with her recently. We now have a plan to keep him away from us. We will use it if we have to, maybe on the ride home. This is called A Warm Welcome. Heloise's husband brought home a friend from his long ago past. It was obvious he'd experienced hard times. Despite his shabby look, he was very gentlemanly, even courtly, and she was taken with him almost immediately. When her husband said he needed to pick up something at the store, she said she would stay with his friend so that they might become better acquainted. He thought that was a great idea. When he left on his errand, Heloise offered to give his friend a bath. This is called Making a Meal for Melissa Was Uncomplicated. She was very fond of chickpea soup. In fact, it was her favorite food. This was well known among her family and friends, who would serve her chickpea soup whenever she came to their house for lunch or supper. "Thank you very much for serving me chickpea soup," she would say with genuine gratitude. "As you know, it is my favorite food." This is called Immaculate Conception. She grew flowers from her vagina at a time when other girls were experiencing their first periods. A spray of fairy foxglove and forget-me-nots sprung from her lap. She believed she was having her first menstruation, since no one had told her what to expect. The following month, to her joy and further puzzlement, a lovely baby's breath appeared. This is called Taking Action. The two nuns kept appearing at the events he attended: the ball game, the movie, the outdoor concert. It seemed a weird coincidence, but he shrugged it off until he realized they were staring at him. He was tempted to confront them, but resisted the urge, thinking he was being paranoid. However, when he found them standing on his lawn, he decided enough was enough. He would have to invite them in. And this last piece is called From a Lecture by the Professor of Thanatology. It was common in the old days to lay out the deceased in the home, often on the kitchen or dining room table. At mealtime, the family of the recently departed would set plates and silverware around the corpse, placing condiments on it if space was tight. This was especially the case if the dead person's body was large. Of course, this would sometimes result in relishes and sauces falling to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Michael. Really much appreciated. Next, we hear from Robert Scotellaro, who will be read by Jeff Friedman, I believe, and is the author of 7 flash fiction collections, most recently Ways to Read the World, finalist for the 2022 American Fiction Award, and God in a Can, and 5 collections of poetry. He has, along with James Thomas, co-edited New Micro, exceptionally short fiction published by Norton. His work has appeared widely and is included in Norton's Flash Fiction International and Flash Fiction America. which is forthcoming, and 5 Best Small Fictions and Best Microfiction Award anthologies. He's the winner of Zone 3's Rainmaker Prize in Poetry and the Blue Light Award for his fiction. Robert is one of the founding donors of the Ransom Flash Fiction Collection at the University of Texas in Austin. He currently lives in San Francisco. Welcome, Robert. Bye, Jeff.
Jeff's still struggling with his mute button.
I'm miming. I from the circus. I just do that. You know, it's our circus section. We do mime all the time. I'm going to change hats because in honor of Robert, Scotty, you know, he'd be wearing a baseball cap. I just couldn't read in another kind of hat if I'm going to be reading Scotty's work. That's the way I feel about it. So it's a pleasure and it's an honor to be asked to read Scotty's amazing stories. I'm quite familiar with them. I've read all of his books, actually. I'm going to read pieces from a few of his collections. We worked this out together, which pieces we'd read. I'll start with a piece from his most recent collection, God in a Can, which was published by Bamboo Dart Press somewhat recently in 2022. And that's an imprint of Pelicanesis. So, okay, God in a Can. I pick up some God in a Can spray at the specialty shop. It costs plenty. First thing I spray are the dirty dishes, which suddenly sparkle, greaseless in a tidy pile. My sickly old cat is next. It springs up from slumber and bats a grape back and forth, skittering across the kitchen floor. She's a wind-up toy of vigor which never tires. I spray the phone and my ex immediately calls, tells me she just got out of the shower and was thinking of me. Make it quick, she says. I spray my old heap and drive the Rolls Royce to her place. At a stoplight, a homeless man runs up with a wet rag and a squeegee to clean my windshield. I spray him and he thanks me right before a crackling bolt shoots out of the can, reducing him to a small, smoldering heap. And then I remember the warning label. Handle with care. Contents may be mercurial. It is twilight and a few water drops left on the windshield from earlier become rubies from the brake lights of the caddy in front of me. The can is on my lap. I shake it. It's low. I hope like hell there'll be enough mercy left in it for the long ride home. Then I'm going to go to an earlier book of his, What We Know So Far, to read a piece entitled Interpreter of Dreams. And from what Robert tells me, this is one of his more autobiographical pieces. Interpreter of Dreams. My mother was the self-appointed interpreter of dreams, coughing out her verdicts with an early morning smoke, mining her slumber for forecasts. Silverware meant guests were coming, hands a gift. Bees represented bad luck, especially if they were swarming. And teeth, the one we dreaded most, meant certain death. And it didn't matter whose. A family member, a neighbor, even old movie stars counted, were not safe. And we'd wait for the axe to fall. And of course, it always did. And she'd say, see? The Rosetta Stone she carried in her head, infallible back then, as we listened with our spoons frozen over cold bowls of cereal. She in her robe with her coffee and her cigarettes and the fate of the world in her hands. Thank you to Robert. So the next book, the next piece I'm going to read is called Funhouse, which was published in Flash Fiction International by Norton Anthology. I think you'll enjoy this one quite a bit. I know I do. Okay, Funhouse. It's a little bit longer than the other two. She'd gotten the funhouse mirrors at an auction and had them put up in the spare bedroom. He found them strange, even a little disturbing, and thought to buy extravagant with the kids away at college and the big tuition bucks spilling out. But she'd insisted on a well-deserved splurge after that, all that straight and narrow, a side of her new to him. So he went along, even following her one night with a bottle of Marquis de Riscal into that room with the lights dimmed and candles she placed on both dressers, adding to the mix. In bed, she began taking off her clothes, then his. No way, he said, draining the last of the wine, gazing into one of the mirrors overhead at their stretched out, undulating forms, fleshy waves of them in the sheets. He started to sit up, but she pulled him back. This is weird, Connie, he said. She reached out a zigzaggy hand and ran it down a zigzaggy middle. Looking left, she was squat and condensed. Her cheeks bulged as if she had 2 apples stuffed in her mouth. Her breasts large, wobbly globes. She guided his hand to them. In another, the two of them were amoeboid, transforming silvery strangers. You've got to be kidding me, he said. She smiled. And at a glance, it was an astonishingly wide curl, liquid as mercury. He continued shifting his vision. My God, he said, what? The size of that thing. She leaned over and whispered something, a name, he thought, not his own, perhaps an endearment. She shook out her hair, jagged bolts against his chest. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, she was wriggly and rosy. A stick figure, a block, a fleshy smear, strange and elegant. He heard some low guttural sounds, his own. She bit his shoulder and he pulled her close. His eyes banged against each corner of their sockets. The room was cluttered. It was ablaze with candlelight, squat, fiery balls, elongated licks of light, and all their odd and flagrant infidelities in every piece of glass. And back to God in a Can. I'm gonna read a piece called Sumo Wrestlers Heating Service. And I just want to mention that there are 2 haikus at the end of the poem. I'll try to indicate that, but at the end of the story. That's why I don't want to mix that up because we're talking about prose poem and flash stories. I don't want to say anything non-specific like that. Sumo Wrestlers Heating Service. In the bitterest winters, their phones are ringing off the hook. The chill, ripe goosebumps rising as the north wind hurls its weight around. Lost chilled, winter-bitten widows, all frosted by life, by life's weather. The calls come in. The sumo wrestlers arrive in pairs at night. Their enormous heft through a doorway, nearly an osmosis, heating up the room at a glance. The sight of them, a king-size bed is required. There is an elaborate tea ceremony. They remove their clothes with a ritualistic poetry and origami's master's art for folding, till they are in full and ample bulk, left in only their mawashi. They ease under the covers, ironically like a whisper with only a small bed spring's complaint, positioning themselves a belly-pointing sandwich of heat and comfort, bookending a client, but not touching. An onion skin, paper-thin margin between, the chills of winter withering for a time. In the dark, a sweet song of Mount Fuji and the flapping of cranes overhead, of lovers outside a red pagoda, and then later alternating, first one reciting a haiku, softly in broken English, and then the other to oohs and ahs in the dark. The summer moon, there are a lot of paper lanterns on the street. And then as the cold wind falters against the window glass like an incompetent would-be intruder, the butterfly perfuming its wings fans the orchid. The next piece takes place in a diner, and it's titled Hell Climbs Up. Hell climbs up for a bit of fresh air and stops in a roadside diner. The hissing air brakes from the 18-wheelers make it antsy, so it sits in the back against the wall, burning up a menu. When the waitress comes over, it wails in a brusque commingling of dead languages, and a few fiery souls crawl out of its chest, then back in again. She takes it all to mean an order of scrams and extra crispy browns with a bucket of ice on the side. And when she repeats this, ticking off the scribbles on her pad, it nods. She scratches an eyebrow with a cracked blue nail of her pinky finger and winks, begins wiping down the table, rearranging the greasy smears in a way that moves hell to tears. A kind of Rorschach hieroglyphic poem, it reads into every swirl. She reaches instinctively for the crumpled tissue in the pocket of her apron, thinks better of it, and pretends she doesn't see the tear sizzle down its cheek and turns away, heads for the plague of locusts seated at the counter. Figures its kind never leaves a decent tip anyway, so what the hell? And I'm going to finish with two pieces from Bad Motel, published by Big Table. These are all 100-word stories. Besides fanning the book, I'll actually get to the page. Sewn in. Outside the diner, it was raining. Periodically, a truck's air brakes would add its hiss to the mix. The trip had been tough. Talk cracked as some of those roads. There were miles yet. Rain shadows ran down that dress you got in Mexico. Little mirror pieces sewn in. You said, we are all prisoners of our own momentum. I passed the salt, didn't know what else to do. The waitress poured coffee like she invented it. Had a wet rag that did little more than reconfigure the table grease. When she flipped her pad page over, we looked up. And last, I'll finish up with the title piece, Bad Motel. Where'd that go? The cab driver's eyes in the rear view mirror as our lips parted, lowering when my eyes were at it. Too much to drink. The motel ceiling fan spinning the scarf you tossed up there. It was red and green, and it wasn't even Christmas, just felt that way. Watching TV after, a politician, a lot of double talk. You shook your head, said, what does it matter if the devil paints his kitchen white? On the way back, you told me your husband's hands were softer than my own. In the light rain, our taxi veered around a mattress in the road. Thank you very much. For Robert.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Jeff, also. And of course, thank all of you. Thank you for your own readings, Meg, Jeff, Kim, Michael, and Robert. Wonderful, wonderful evening tonight. And on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Cassandra for the open mic section of the show.
Hooray! And we've got some new publications from the open micers too, which is exciting. But we're going to start with Linda, who I wanted to have last week, and I had to hold her over to this week. So I'm very excited. I'm not sure what she's got for us. It might be flash, it might be poetry. She's going to surprise us. Linda.
Hello. I will read the flash fiction because why not? That's the theme.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. I really don't know. That's what I'm calling it. Okay, it's called Gloom Street. Papa Champ's variety store, the liveliest business along the highway, boasts a bright red asphalt roof, whose shingles curl ever so slightly in the blazing noonday sun. Children pitch and catch balls behind the store. The cracked, jigsawed sidewalks are bedazzled with violets, dandelions, and Indian paintbrush. The yellow-brown lawns beg for a drenching rain. The children's smiles, coupled with the cheers at the ballpark, enliven a street once known for feuds, riots, and tear gas. Further down the street along Meekum River, the commercial greenhouse, pushing up petunias, boasts green grass and lush floral annuals and perennials. The pink and red petunias intoxicate the hovering hummingbirds at the rear of the lot, where the overflow of this year's inventory is nestled amidst lilacs and morning glories climbing white trellises. This year's business is slow due to less people using irrigation as their water bill has skyrocketed. Roger, the greenhouse owner, confesses the river is low and he probably should not draw water for his flowers. But what other choice is there? That and the fact that his brother-in-law is the water commissioner. On the roof of an abandoned shopping mall, a billboard reads Jack Daniels. A bottle's tipping whiskey into a tumbler. Another billboard announces Fife's Casino, just 12 miles southwest, where one can try their luck with just a buck. Gloom Street boasts no glitz, no glory, just another pass-through route in the Midwest. It's as if a morbid trauma inhabits its blood and bones. Used car lots, apartment high-rises, and the occasional liquor store and fireworks shack adorn either side of the highway. Newly green-carded immigrants live here and are fortunate to have landed an apartment after many months, even years of living out of tents and fenced-in prisons at the border. A Piggly Wiggly grocery flanks a parking lot shared by a neighboring elementary school. Years of wear have snuffed out all the letters on its sign, so what appears looks like an acronym, SVINES, which is St. Vincent's Elementary School. A four-way intersection with a traffic light reveals where Gloom Street and Glad Street cross. There is a dog walking park along Glad Street that boasts a lush Kelly green turf with a fountain spraying wildly aloft. Continuing south at the fork, another intersection sign says that Crimpletown is 15 more miles. This is the destination of one Ginga McPherson, who has dreamed that one day she could meet the notorious Dr. Monsieur Philippe Leroux, known for his sage philosophical advice and his mystical powers. Some say he's a modern day wizard. Ginga, a 40-something woman with green eyes and freckles and shoulder-length auburn hair, gathers up her thoughts, walks into the warehouse waiting area where no one but an oversized Maine Coon cat is positioned to pounce on a mouse. Ginga, now concerned, wonders if she has arrived at the wrong address. Her GPS coordinates seem correct. However, a warehouse in Crimpletown is an unlikely locale for the French doctor of philosophy to take up his practice. Ginga pulls her cell phone from her pocket. She attempts to search once again online to be certain she has arrived at the destination of Dr. Leroux. To her surprise, the town listed is Templeton, not Crimpletown, where Ginga's only company is an enormous cat. Hurriedly, she walks to the exit to leave. The door handle will not turn. Ginga is locked in. Thank
Wow,
you.
who knew you had that up your sleeve? That was perfect. Thank you. Shingles curl ever so slightly in the midday sun. I'm tossing up between whether I like that or the idea of an enormous cat. I like both of them. Thank you so much. That was really great.
I'm glad it was flash fiction, so I got to read it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
DeWitt and his chair. DeWitt is going to read us something magnificent as he always does. Cough and all.
Yeah, that's for pity. Thank you. This is called Improvisational, and it came out in the Ivy Review before COVID. And the gimmick is to steal a sentence that's from somebody else's work that is very laden, and not be faithful to it at all, but in fact riff off of it into something new. So the sentence comes from a story by Leonard Michaels. I don't even remember what it was. The hall was clogged with bodies, none of them hers, but who could be sure? So I start with that. The hall was clogged with bodies, none of them hers, but who could be sure? This had been all a terrible mistake, and not her doing. Higher powers were at fault, and surely higher powers had no business asking her to solve the problem. She had been at that Internal Revenue Service desk in the lobby of the John Fitzgerald Kennedy Building, Boston, Massachusetts, early in the afternoon of April 14th, dutifully attempting as a good citizen, good mother, good single parent, good employee, and loyal practicing Catholic that she was and always had been, to have her long Form 1040 completed with the help of the IRS itself. W-2 forms, receipts, medical bills, bank statements, and canceled checks. Everything was ready and neatly organized in an accordion file within her capacious straw purse. They had x-rayed the purse as she stepped through the metal detector just inside the lobby doors. She had had to take 4 different buses to get here, all the way from West Somerville. She had waited in a line, had to shuffle and stand for 5, 10, 30 minutes while some baggy pants young so-and-so, an overbearing, indignant young man, white but unable to speak English, fought with the clerk behind the desk. Similar lines snaked towards other clerks, other desks. She was 42 years old and in good health. She worked 2 different jobs, meter maid for the city of Somerville from 7 to 3 every day but Sunday, and from 6 to midnight every night except Wednesdays. She folded laundry and oversaw the Davis Square laundromat. Oh, there was more, much more to her living. Lives depended on her. And as she waited, she was lost in thought of these lives. 5-year-old Jamie with his bad cough, his 8-year-old sister Wanda Jane, whose birthday was this weekend, thinking of the rent, thinking of her own father, bedridden in the home, standing there, feet aching and more uncomfortable with their souls and bodies suspension, when the bomb, it was a bomb, bloomed everywhere. When she felt massive force crushing her at once, all over, lifting and rending, and then like being pulled inside out, like a rubber glove stripped off the hand, the dry part, pale and versed. She was herself, substantial, essential and certain, and not in line at all, but hovering like smoke, but concentrated like a nebula in space. And judgment surrounded her, not condemning judgment, not praising or loving or welcoming, but indignant and self-perplexed judgment. What was she doing here? No words, but the question, the knowing. Not her. This was not her death. This was absent-minded omniscience. This was impossible. And then again, the inside-out implosion. And the hall was clogged with bodies, none of them hers. And who could be sure? Bodies sundered, shredded, torn, shreds without bodies. Wetness, stink, and smear. The shower sprinklers pouring. Bone, debris of glass, caster from a chair, paper, plastic, landfill detritus, rubble and dust and guttering fires, and starting in heaps. Heaps like those filling trenches in concentration camps, but worse. Heaps of dismemberment would be some part intact and recognizable. 2 shoes, red pumps neatly side by side as if the feet left to climb to bed. The gory hand, the torso, nail, torn shirt, a search, desperate, obliged like a punishment, through lifelessness, ripped past shape or meaning. And if she'd vaporized, if in that instant her solid flesh had melted and dissolved, or if this unfamiliar leg, round, raw and marbled as a mutton, perhaps were hers, would she recognize her part and how? How to identify her own disfigurement? Where the scar, where the bit of clothing? And if she did, if she felt bidden in all her passion craved, if she found this part, forearm or hand or skull pan like a melon rind, or that, and if she searched and gathered all, or if there under X, Y, Z intact, she lay whole, unmarked, as if in sleep, a sleep deserved, a sleep denied by all her love and effort to bless life, to give, to serve, praise the Lord, to make him holy. If there, her, what then? Was she to rise? Eyelids flutter, pain flood in, her gasp for breath, her cry. Was she to complete some answer like a harmony? The one whole flesh reviving, among so many bodies and so many parts, like Judgment Day, all the broken and diseased, the aged, the maimed, the poor, the rich, the takers and deceivers, the righteous, the millions from the trenches. Your life's a miracle, the fireman said, G's of amazement, like a rocket's thrust, stretching his beefy face. Like that, as if her refund due. And no, I'd never read Topi's Wolf Bullet in the Brain.
Wow. All that from the beginning line. I love it. From accordion files to absent-minded omniscience. My goodness. Roller coaster of emotion. Thank you so much. John Wessick is next with his new book to show around.
Yes, out from Human Error Publishing is my new poetry collection, The Shaman in the Library. Let's see if there's a link in the chat.
Hooray.
But I feel compelled to read a flash fiction piece because I'm lousy at marketing. So here we go. This is called The Slender Thread. My insurance agent sent me a birthday card. It was a cheap disposable thing with the company logo inside, along with a pre-printed message thanking me for my business. It was the only card I received, but I was okay with that. I'm past the age where women view me as a sexual being, so no wife or girlfriend remembered the date. If I'd told them, the guys at work would have taken me to lunch, but I kept quiet. Why spend an extra hour making small talk with people I have nothing in common with? I left work early on my birthday, and despite the traffic by the Del Mar Fair, got home at 4:30. The card was where I left it on the bloodwood table. I picked it up, carried it to the garbage can, and paused to examine the greeting written in faux gold cursive on the rainbow cover. Somehow I couldn't throw it away. It was as if the card had become the last slender thread connecting me with the rest of humanity. I checked my watch. It was 4:38. I had just enough time. I dashed to my blue Honda Civic, leaving the front door unlocked in my haste. I backed out of the stall, slammed the car into gear, and burned rubber in the parking lot. At the exit, I stopped while a pregnant woman pushed a baby carriage in front of me at the speed of continental drift. Once she cleared my path, I rocketed down the street, took the right of way from a white van, and fought my way through the traffic by the mini mart. I took a left, barreled down Tamarack, and got on the freeway. Bad idea. Traffic was going nowhere. It was 4:52. Desperate measures were called for if I wanted to make it before closing time. I jerked the wheel to the right and passed the others on the shoulder. Sadly for me, a guy in a silver Toyota Tundra had the same idea and cut me off. I followed him onto the exit and into the left turn lane where he stopped even though the light was green. Damn it! I laid on the horn, passed him on the right, and only then saw a line of cars had blocked him too. By the time I got to my insurance agent's location on El Camino Real, the office was closed. I pounded on the glass door with my palms and was about to leave when a man with gray curly hair came from the back. Even in the warm California weather, he wore a tan cardigan. I placed the birthday card flat against the glass. He tilted his head back to look through the reading glasses, writing low on his nose, gave a smile of recognition, and unlocked the door. Thank you for the card, I said. I had to come. You're welcome. Won't you come inside? He stepped out of the way to let me pass and locked the door behind me. I've been meaning to talk to you about life insurance. We offer whole life policies as well as term insurance for as little as $1 a day. I followed him to his office where we talked until long after dark. As we discussed my age, medical condition, and whether I smoked or took part in risky activities, I felt a deep human connection with him. Around 8, I left feeling refreshed, renewed, and secure in the knowledge that for just a few $1,000s a year, I would make some distant relative very happy when I died.
Wow. Well, I felt a deep human connection with that because my first car was a blue Honda Civic. So I was driving along in there with you. Oh my goodness.
Thanks.
You.
And I'm having a virtual book release tomorrow on Zoom at 5 o'clock Eastern time, and I'll post that information in the chat
Please
too.
do.
Thanks, everybody.
And message me. That'd be great. Thank you. We have badass Cindy with the bouncy hair. Cindy.
With the bouncy hair, but no badass shirt. I'm just wearing a plain black and white.
You still look badass. It doesn't matter what you wear. It just everything screams badass poet.
Well, I actually do have a flash fiction piece in my new book, but I'm gonna make you all wait till the end of the year for when it comes out. Instead, I'm gonna unleash. That's the name of my publisher, by the way, Unleash Press. I'm going to unleash a new poem on all you unsuspecting people. What I've been trying to do is some short prose poems with a lot of alliteration and using one letter of the alphabet for each poem. And this one, I think last time I read one with V, a lot of V in it. This one is called A Holy Prose Poem in the Key of G. So you can figure out the letter. God almighty, geez, good golly and gee whiz. My good girlfriends, Gwendolyn, Grace, Gloria, and Genevieve, say they are aggrieved that greenhouse gases are extinguishing the glorious foliage. And I guess I can do nothing but agree with this ghastly and ghostly prognosis. Glory be.
And that was glorious. I loved it. Thank you, Cindy. I want to read the whole alphabet. I can't wait. Amazing.
I'm doing F next, so watch.
Oh, watch out for next week's F. Now we cannot end without Bob from his kitchen. He's famous. What he tells us is what we go through the rest of the day with. So Bob, what are we listening to today from you?
Okay, my computer's doing something weird, but you can still see me, I think.
We can see you and your kitchen, both important.
Yeah.
And my
okay, this is a borderline between prose poem and flash fiction. And it's old. What? It's old.
It's hybrid.
And I may have read it here before about a year ago, but I'm not sure. Anyway, how it all began. And you remember how when she died, they stuffed her and set her on the porch, and how everyone came around and they just stare and don't say nothing or do nothing, except for a few of the younger ones who crept up real close and tried to reach out to touch her toes. But their folks pull them back as soon as they see what they're up to, and everyone else is standing back a ways. And he could tell them maybe, just maybe, they was a wee bit scared, and he's watching their faces, so he'll be able to tell all the folks up at the holler about it. When suddenly there was this great big noise, and he looked back at her sitting on the porch, and there's this black stuff, sort of like smoke and sort of like tar, coming out of her chest. And that was how it all began.
Loved it. Oh my goodness. That was a performance and a half today, Bob. Wow. Thank you so much. Loved it. Loved the delivery. Loved the whole piece. So that is the end of the open mic section. Back to you, Mark. And I have a cab in 2 minutes who is going to take me away.
Well, we'll let him take you away, of course, to more prosperous climes. In the meantime, just once again, thank you, Meg, Jeff, Michael, Robert, and Kim for a wonderful reading tonight. And also to let you know, next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we have the Hudson Valley Writers Center show, which includes a stellar cast, including Dorian Lowe, Lelia Chatty, Liz Marlowe, Nick Makoha, Andrea Deacon, Nathan McLean, Joan Kwang Glass, Sean Singer, Jennifer Franklin, and Fred Marchant. So please do join us for both those shows if you can. In the meantime, I thought I'd close off the show with a little prose poem from one of our favorites, Russell Edson. With sincerest regret, for Charles Cynic. Like a monstrous snail, a toilet slides into a living room on a track of wet, demanding to be loved. It is impossible, and we tender our sincerest regrets. In the book of the heart, there is no mention made of plumbing. And although we've spent our intimacy many times with you, you belong to an unfortunate reference, which we would rather not embrace. The toilet slides away. Thank you so much, everyone, for a wonderful show. Wish you a wonderful evening, wonderful weekend, lots of love and poetry and good health. Thank you.
Peace, love, and flash.
And prose poem.
Bye.
Night, everybody.